Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood in the center of the enormous chamber, feeling smaller than she had ever felt in her life. Above her, the 47 representatives of the Galactic Council sat in their designated seats, arranged in a perfect circle that rose up like the inside of a massive bowl. Each alien species looked different from the next. Some had scales, others had feathers, and a few seemed to be made of something that glowed softly in the dim light. Elena had prepared for this day for 5 years. She wore her best uniform, dark blue with the gold emblem of Earth on her shoulder. Her hands wanted to shake, but she forced them to stay still. Behind her stood Captain Marcus Chen, his military dress uniform crisp and perfect. He was there as her escort, but also as a reminder that humanity had strength, even if the Council didn't want to acknowledge it. "Ambassador Vasquez," the voice boomed through the chamber. It belonged to Speaker Zarthek, a Krell whose insect-like body was covered in hard, dark armor. His multiple eyes gleamed as he looked down at her. "You have come to hear our decision regarding humanity's petition for full membership in the Galactic Council." "Yes, Speaker," Elena said, her voice steady despite the fear in her chest. "Humanity has served its 50-year probationary period. We have followed every rule, contributed to galactic trade, and helped keep the peace in 3 different conflicts." A clicking sound came from Zarthek's mandibles. It might have been a laugh. "That is one perspective." Another voice spoke up, this one musical and strange. It came from Tavara, Representative Shianal, whose pale, almost transparent body seemed to float rather than sit. The Tavara were telepaths, and many species found them unsettling. Humanity's contributions cannot erase their nature. In our observation, humans are aggressive. They expand too quickly. They refuse to adapt to proper galactic culture. Elena felt her jaw tighten. "With respect, we have adapted. We've learned 70 different languages. We've established peaceful trade with 30 species. Our medical research has saved millions of lives across the galaxy." "And your military research?" Zarthek leaned forward. "You develop weapons at an alarming rate. You study battle tactics as if war is inevitable. Many species fear you, Ambassador. They fear what you might become." "We study defense because we've learned the universe can be dangerous," Elena replied. "We don't apologize for wanting to protect ourselves." "This is exactly the problem," Shinal said softly. "You see threats everywhere. You cannot trust. You cannot submit to the wisdom of elder species who have maintained peace for thousands of years." Marcus shifted behind Elena. She knew he wanted to speak, to argue, but this wasn't his place. She was humanity's voice today. "If the Council would simply give us a chance," Elena began. "We have given you 50 years, Zarthek interrupted. "That is more than sufficient time to evaluate your species. The Council will now vote." Elena's heart sank. She had hoped for more time to argue humanity's case, but the decision had clearly been made before she ever entered the chamber. This was just a formality, a performance for the historical record. One by one, the representatives activated their voting crystals. Blue light meant acceptance. Red light meant rejection. Elena watched as the lights appeared above each representative's seat, floating in the air like small stars. Red, 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 blue, red, 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 red. The pattern continued. Elena counted silently. 8 blue lights appeared, scattered among the circle. The Vorn, who had traded with humans for decades, voted blue. The Shan, who admired human explorers, voted blue. A few others she didn't expect also voted blue. But 39 votes glowed red in the darkness of the chamber. "The Council has decided," Zarthek announced. "Humanity is denied full membership. Furthermore, the Council finds that humanity's presence in regulated space presents a potential threat to galactic peace. Therefore, we order the immediate banishment of all human colonies from Council-regulated territories." The word hit Elena like a physical blow. "Banishment? You will have 10 standard years to evacuate all human settlements, stations, and facilities from any system under Council jurisdiction. After that time, any humans found in regulated space will be arrested and their ships impounded. Elena found her voice, though it shook with anger now instead of fear. This is insane. We have 40 million people living in council space, families, children. People who have built entire lives on worlds we settled legally during our probationary period. Those settlements were always temporary, pending the council's final decision. Shinal said, "You knew this was possible." "We knew rejection was possible," Elena said. "We never imagined the council would be cruel enough to force an entire species into exile." "It is not cruelty," Zarthek said. "It is necessity. Humanity has proven too dangerous, too unpredictable. The elder species of this council have maintained peace for millennia. We will not allow one young, violent species to disrupt that peace." Marcus stepped forward. "Ambassador Vasquez, let me speak." Elena wanted to say no, but what did it matter now? She nodded. Marcus looked up at the council members, his eyes hard. "You call us violent? You who have just condemned 40 million innocent people to uproot their entire lives? You speak of peace, but this decision will create nothing but resentment. You speak of wisdom, but you're acting out of fear." "Captain, you forget your place," Zarthek warned. "No, you've forgotten yours," Marcus shot back. "You're supposed to be leaders, but you're cowards. You see a species that might one day challenge your authority, so you're trying to crush us before we can grow stronger. But I promise you this, you'll regret it." "Are you threatening the council?" Zarthek rose from his seat, his body suddenly seeming much larger. "I'm making a prediction," Marcus said coldly. "Humanity doesn't break easily. You're making a mistake." Elena put a hand on Marcus's arm. "Enough, Captain." She turned back to the council. "Is there any chance of appeal? Any way to change this decision?" "The vote is final," Zarthek said. "You have 10 years. I suggest you begin preparations immediately." Elena stood there for a moment longer, looking up at the circle of alien faces. Some looked satisfied. Some looked uncomfortable. A few, including the Voran representative, looked genuinely sad. But it didn't matter. The decision was made. "Then humanity will remember this day," Elena said quietly. "We came to you seeking partnership, friendship, a place among the stars. You've answered with fear and rejection. We will not forget." She turned and walked toward the exit, Marcus beside her. As the massive doors opened before them, Elena activated her communication device. "This is Ambassador Vasquez to Earth Control. The Council has voted. We've been banished from regulated space. Inform the President. We have 10 years to evacuate and some very difficult decisions to make." The walk back to their ship was silent. But in that silence, Elena felt something growing inside her. Not despair, but determination. The Council thought they were crushing humanity's dreams. Instead, they had just set humanity free. As their ship undocked from the Council station and jumped to FTL, Elena looked at Marcus. "They're afraid of us. That means they know we're capable of more than they want to admit." Marcus nodded slowly. "So what do we do?" Elena smiled, though there was no humor in it. "We prove them right, but not in the way they expect. We show them that humanity doesn't need their council to thrive. We'll build something better." The Idiom stars stretched around them as they headed home, carrying news that would change humanity's future forever. The news of humanity's banishment spread across human space like wildfire. On Earth, in the orbital habitats, on Mars, and the outer colonies, people watched their screens in shock and anger. 40 million humans living in council-regulated space suddenly found themselves unwelcome, given 10 years to pack up their lives and leave worlds they considered home. President Catherine Morrison addressed Earth from the United Government headquarters in Geneva. Her face was calm, but her eyes burned with quiet fury. "The Galactic Council has made their decision. They expect us to tuck our tails between our legs and crawl back to the Sol system. They expect us to abandon the frontier, to give up our dreams of exploring the stars. I am here to tell you that humanity will do no such thing." The response was immediate. Within hours, the United Government issued new orders. Any human colony beyond Council-regulated space would hold its position. Any human living in Council space could choose, return to the Sol system, or relocate to the frontier regions known as the Wild Reaches, where no Council authority existed. Admiral James Hawthorne received his orders while commanding the 3rd Fleet near the Outer Rim. He was a career military man, 60 years old with gray hair and eyes that had seen more space battles than he cared to remember. His new mission was simple in concept, but massive in scale. Protect the refugee convoys as they moved from Council space to the frontier. The first convoy departed 3 weeks after the Council's verdict. 70 civilian ships carrying 50,000 people and everything they could take with them made the jump from New Harmony, a human colony world in Council space, toward the Wild Reaches. Admiral Hawthorne's fleet surrounded them like a protective shell. On one of those civilian ships, a young engineer named Sarah Okonkwo sat with her family in their small cabin. She was 24 years old, brilliant with machines and angry at the universe. New Harmony had been her home since birth. She had friends there, a good job at the terraforming facility, and plans for her future. Now all of that was gone. "It's not fair," she said to her mother, who sat across from her, holding Sarah's younger brother's hand. "Life rarely is," her mother replied, "but we survive. That's what our family has always done." The convoy made it through the first week without incident. Then came Junction Station. Junction Station was a massive trading post that sat exactly on the border between Council space and unregulated territory. By law, it was neutral ground. Admiral Hawthorne's convoy stopped there to refuel and resupply before making the final push into the Wild Reaches. That's when the Council peacekeepers arrived. Hawthorne watched them on his monitors. 3 dozen Council military ships led by a Krell commander named Zethkor. The communication came through on all channels. "Human vessels, you are in violation of Council security protocols. Your military fleet must withdraw immediately, or we will consider this an act of aggression." Hawthorne felt his jaw clench. "This is neutral territory. We have every right to be here." "Council peacekeepers have authority in all border regions," Zethkor replied. "You will withdraw, or we will open fire." "We have 3,000 civilians docked at that station," Hawthorne said carefully. "Give us time to evacuate them and we'll leave." "You have 1 hour." It wasn't enough time. Hawthorne knew it, and he suspected Zethkor knew it too. The Council wanted an incident, wanted an excuse to show force. They were trying to make humanity's departure as painful and humiliating as possible. Hawthorne gave the order to begin emergency evacuation, but chaos erupted at the station. People panicked, rushing for the airlocks. And then, 30 minutes into the evacuation, Zethkor's fleet opened fire. They targeted the station's docking bays, claiming later they thought they saw weapons being loaded. The explosions tore through 3 sections of the station. Atmosphere vented into space. People screamed, running for safety that didn't exist. Sarah Okonkwo was helping children board an escape shuttle when the first explosion hit. The blast threw her against a wall. When she pulled herself up, her ears ringing, she saw bodies floating in corridors where the hull had been breached. She ran, searching for her family, but found only chaos and death. By the time Admiral Hawthorne's fleet drove off the Council ships, 3,000 people were dead. Sarah's mother and brother were among them. The massacre at Junction Station changed everything. What had been a reluctant exodus became something harder, angrier. Humanity wasn't just leaving Council space anymore. They were fleeing from enemies who wanted to hurt them. The convoys continued, but now everyone understood the danger. Some Council species, ashamed of what had happened at Junction Station, quietly helped. The Vorn, a race of reptilian traders who had always liked humans, provided secret star maps showing safe routes through uncharted space. One Vorn captain, a female named Lyra, risked her career to supply Hawthorne's fleet with food and medicine. "Why are you helping us?" Hawthorne asked her during a covert meeting. Lyra's forked tongue flickered. "Because the Council is wrong. They're afraid of change. Afraid of species who might challenge the old ways. But fear makes people cruel. I won't be part of that cruelty. Your people could punish you for this." "Then they will," Lyra said simply. "Some things are more important than safety." Using Lyra's maps, Hawthorne led the refugee fleets deeper into uncharted territory. And there, in a region that the Council had never bothered to explore, humanity found something remarkable. The Terminus Cluster. 18 star systems, rich in resources with 7 habitable worlds. It was perfect, far enough from Council space to be safe, but close enough to the frontier colonies to maintain supply lines. The first ships landed on the best of the worlds. Someone suggested calling it New Earth, but that felt like looking backward. Instead, they named it New Terra, a fresh start. Sarah Okonkwo was on that first landing. She had survived Junction Station, but she had lost her family. The anger inside her had crystallized into something cold and sharp. She helped build the first settlement, working 20-hour days, barely sleeping. Other survivors recognized something in her, a determination that bordered on obsession. Within 6 months, 10,000 people lived on New Terra. Within a year, 50,000. The other habitable worlds in the Terminus cluster filled with settlers. Humanity wasn't just evacuating. They were colonizing, spreading out, building new homes with a speed that would have impressed even their critics. Admiral Hawthorne established military bases on the outer planets of the cluster. He knew the Council might try something else, might try to push humanity back further. He wouldn't let that happen. During the second year of the Exodus, Sarah Okonkwo joined Hawthorne's intelligence division. She had a gift for understanding systems, for seeing patterns. More than that, she had motivation. She wanted to hurt the Council the way they had hurt her family. "I can help you," she told Hawthorne during her interview. "I know how to gather information. I know how to build networks. And I know how to make the people who killed my family regret it." Hawthorne looked at the young woman sitting across from him. Her eyes were hard, older than her years. He saw potential there, but also danger. "Revenge is a poor motivator, Lieutenant Okonkwo." "I'm not looking for revenge," Sarah said quietly. "I'm looking for justice. There's a difference." 5 years after the Council's verdict, the last refugee convoy arrived in the Terminus cluster. 40 million humans now lived in 23 star systems beyond Council authority. They had built cities, farms, factories, and shipyards. They had created something new. On New Terra, in the capital city of Liberation, humanity's leaders gathered. President Morrison, who had left Earth to personally oversee the new settlements, stood before them. "The Council thought they were punishing us," she said. "They thought they were sending us into exile, into darkness. But they gave us something better, freedom. Freedom from their rules, their fears, their limitations. So today I propose we formalize what we've already become. We are no longer just refugees. We are the Terran Dominion." The vote was unanimous. Admiral Hawthorne issued the next orders. All borders of the Dominion would be closed to Council ships. No Council species would be allowed to enter without permission. Humanity would chart its own course now. In her small office, Sarah Okonkwo looked at the star maps on her screen. Somewhere out there, the Council was watching, wondering what humanity would do next. Let them wonder, she thought. Let them worry. The Exodus was over. Something new was beginning. Behind the closed borders of the Terran Dominion, humanity changed. Without the Council watching, without their rules and restrictions, humans did what humans had always done best. They adapted. They innovated and they pushed boundaries. Marcus Chen, the former captain who had stood beside Ambassador Vasquez during the Council's verdict, now stood on the balcony of the President's residence on New Terra. He had been elected President of the Dominion 3 years ago, and the weight of leading 40 million people across 23 star systems felt heavier each day. But he wouldn't trade it for anything. "The quantum drive tests are showing promising results," said Dr. Kenji Tanaka, who had joined Marcus on the balcony. Kenji was a small man with tired eyes and brilliant mind. He led the Dominion's Advanced Sciences Division, which meant he was responsible for all the projects that the Council had labeled too dangerous. "How promising?" Marcus asked. "We'll be able to cross the same distances as Council FTL drives in about 60% of the time. Maybe faster once we refine the technology." Kenji smiled. "The Council banned quantum drive research 200 years ago because they said it was unstable. Turns out they just didn't want younger species having a speed advantage." Marcus nodded slowly. It was a pattern they had discovered again and again. The Council didn't ban technologies because they were dangerous. They banned them because they were equalizers, things that might let newer species compete with the elder races. "What else do we have ready?" Marcus asked. "Nanotech manufacturing will be online in 6 months. We can grow ship hulls in weeks instead of months. The medical team has extended average human lifespan to 140 years, and the AI integration program." Kenji hesitated. That one makes people nervous. Makes you nervous too? A little, Kenji admitted. But the council was wrong about AI. Yes, it's powerful. Yes, it needs to be handled carefully. But banning it completely? That's just fear. We're being smarter. Our AIs are tools, not replacements for human decision-making. Marcus turned to look at the city below. Liberation had grown from a frontier settlement to a proper city in just 5 years. Buildings reached toward the sky. Parks and gardens created green spaces, and in the distance, he could see the shipyards where the Dominion's new fleet was taking shape. Humanity was building more than just cities. They were building a new culture, a new identity. In a secure facility beneath the city, Sarah Okonkwo sat in front of multiple screens, each showing different data streams. She was 31 now, and she had risen quickly through Dominion intelligence. Now she was the director, responsible for gathering information about everything happening outside the Dominion's borders, and she had become very good at her job. Another 3 species have sent covert messages, her assistant reported. They're asking about joining the Dominion. Sarah studied the data. Who are they? The Lithans, silicon-based species that the Council treats like second-class citizens because they don't breathe oxygen. The Mycelians, they grow biological ships which freaks out the Council. And the Corval, they're a warrior culture that got tired of Council peacekeepers telling them violence is never the answer. Sarah leaned back in her chair. This was the 5th time this year that non-human species had reached out. The Dominion had been built by humans, but that didn't mean it had to stay that way. Set up meetings, Sarah said. Let's hear what they have to say. Over the next 6 months, representatives from 12 different species visited New Terra in secret. They all had similar stories. The Council had rejected them, restricted them, or simply ignored them. They saw what humanity was building and wanted to be part of it. President Chen called a special session of the Dominion Congress. We have a choice to make, he told the assembled representatives. We can remain isolated, just us, or we can open our doors to others who the Council has failed. The debate was heated. Some argued that humanity needed to focus on its own survival. Others said that accepting aliens would make the Dominion stronger, more diverse, harder for the Council to dismiss. Elena Vasquez, now 83 years old and retired, came out of retirement to speak to Congress. Her hair was silver, her movements slower, but her voice still carried authority. The Council rejected us because they said we were too different, too dangerous, she said. If we now reject others for being different, we become exactly what they feared, closed-minded, afraid, tribal. The Dominion should be better than that. We should be what the Council could never be, truly accepting of all species who share our values. The vote was close, but it passed. The Terran Dominion would become the Free People's Alliance, open to any species that respected freedom, cooperation, and mutual defense. The Lithans were the first to officially join. Their ambassador, a being that looked like living crystal, spoke at the joining ceremony. You accept us as we are. You don't try to change us. This is what we have always wanted. The Mycelians came next, bringing their unique biotechnology. Their ships were grown, not built, and they offered to teach humans their methods. Within a year, the alliance grew to include 17 species. The Dominion's borders expanded to 70 systems. Captain Lyra Vorn, the traitor who had helped humanity during the Exodus, arrived at New Terra seeking asylum. The Council had finally discovered her aid to humans and exiled her. Sarah Okonkwo personally met her ship at the docking bay. You risked everything for us, Sarah said. Welcome home. Lyra's eyes glittered. I thought I was losing my home. Instead, I found a better one. The Dominion's military grew stronger. Admiral Hawthorne, now a grizzled veteran in his late 60s, oversaw the construction of a new fleet. The ships used quantum drives, AI-assisted weapon systems, and nanotech armor. They were smaller than Council warships, but faster and more maneuverable. We're not trying to match the Council ship for ship, Hawthorne explained to his officers. We're making something different, something they won't know how to fight. The Dominion also developed new tactics, swarm warfare using hundreds of small drone ships controlled by a central AI. Hit-and-run strikes using quantum drives to appear and disappear faster than Council sensors could track. Unconventional thinking that would have been discouraged in the rigid Council military structure. Dr. Tanaka's genetic enhancement program became available to all Dominion citizens who wanted it. It was completely voluntary, but the benefits were significant. better disease resistance, faster healing, stronger bones and muscles. About 30% of Dominion citizens chose to undergo the treatments. The council would call this playing God, one reporter said to Dr. Tanaka during an interview. The council calls anything they don't understand dangerous, Tanaka replied. We're not playing God. We're just using the tools evolution gave us, our brains, to make ourselves better. Humans have been doing that since we invented medicine. The population of the Alliance boomed. Humans were having more children, knowing they had a secure future. Cloning facilities provided organs for medical treatments. Extended lifespans meant people had more time to learn, to create, to build. Within 10 years of the Exodus, the human population alone had grown to 200 million. In the council chambers, far from Dominion space, Speaker Zarthek the Elder reviewed reports about the human expansion with growing concern. His species had long lifespans, and he had personally overseen humanity's banishment. Now he was beginning to wonder if it had been a mistake. They are building something, his intelligence officer reported. Something powerful. How powerful? Zarthek asked. We don't know. They've closed their borders completely. Our scouts can't penetrate their sensor nets, but the energy signatures we're detecting suggest industrial capacity far beyond what they should have achieved in such a short time. Zarthek clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. Send a diplomatic fleet. Make it clear we come in peace, but include enough warships to remind them of the Council's power. Let's see what humanity has really built. When Sarah Okonkwo received intelligence about the incoming Council fleet, she smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. For 10 years, she had been building spy networks, gathering intelligence, preparing for the day when the Council would come back. Let them come, she told President Chen. It's time they learned what humanity has become. Admiral Hawthorne received his orders and began positioning the Dominion fleet. He had 200 ships now, not nearly as many as the Council force. But numbers weren't everything. As the Council fleet approached the Dominion border, every human settlement prepared. Every species in the Alliance watched and waited. The isolation was ending. The galaxy was about to discover what happened when you banished humanity and then tried to come back. Admiral Zarthek the Younger commanded the Council fleet from his flagship, the Eternal Harmony. He was the son of Speaker Zarthek, and he had been given this mission to prove himself worthy of his father's legacy. 200 ships followed his command, a show of force that should make even the proudest species think twice about defying the Council. We're approaching the human border, his navigation officer reported. Proceed, Zarthek ordered. They'll detect us and send a delegation to negotiate. This will be simple. He was wrong. The moment his fleet crossed into Dominion space, alarms began screaming across every Council ship. The younger Zarthek stared at his displays in confusion. Energy signatures were appearing everywhere. Dozens, then hundreds of contacts all around his fleet. Report, he demanded. Small craft, sir. Hundreds of them. They just appeared. Our sensors didn't detect any jump signatures. On New Terra, Fleet Admiral Amara Okafor watched the tactical display with satisfaction. She was Admiral Hawthorne's successor, a brilliant strategist in her early 40s who had grown up in the Dominion. She had never known the Council's authority, and she didn't fear it. Launch second wave, she ordered calmly. Around the Council fleet, space rippled as more Dominion ships emerged from quantum jumps. The Council's FTL technology needed time to spin up and cool down between jumps. Dominion quantum drives could jump, strike, and jump again within minutes. Admiral Zarthek the Younger tried to maintain his composure. Open a channel. Demand they withdraw immediately. But before his communication officer could send the message, the Dominion ships attacked. They didn't use the massive energy weapons typical of Council warships. Instead, hundreds of small drones swarmed toward the Council fleet, each one armed and controlled by AI systems that could think faster than any biological pilot. They dodged and weaved through defensive fire. Too many targets for the Council's weapons to track. The first Council ship took damage within 30 seconds. Then another. Then 5 more. Return fire, Zarthek ordered. All ships, defensive formation. But the Council fleet couldn't form defensive positions fast enough. The Dominion ships were everywhere, appearing, attacking, and vanishing before the Council could respond. And behind the swarm of drones came the larger Dominion warships, using their superior speed to hit Council ships from unexpected angles. The Battle of Redemption Point, named for the navigation beacon where the fleets met, lasted 4 hours. By the end, 37 council ships were destroyed or disabled. The rest retreated in disorder, jumping away as quickly as their drives would allow. Admiral Zarthek the Younger sat in his command chair, staring at the ruins of his fleet in shock. He had lost, badly. The humans, who the council had dismissed as too young and too weak, had just handed him the worst military defeat the council had suffered in 200 years. The news spread across the galaxy at light speed. The human dominion, the Free People's Alliance, was not weak. They were not helpless refugees hiding in the dark. They were a major military power, and they had just proven it to everyone. In the council chambers, panic set in. Speaker Zarthek the Elder called for an emergency session. 47 species gathered, but now there was fear in their voices where before there had been arrogance. "This is what we warned you about," Tavara Representative Shinal said, their telepathic voice sharp with accusation. "Humanity is dangerous. We must act before they become more powerful." "Act how?" asked the Vorn representative, a new one since Lyra's exile. "Did you see the battle reports? Our fleet was twice their size and they destroyed us." "Then we send a larger fleet," said the Krell representative. 600 ships. 1,000 if needed. We crush them before they grow stronger. The chamber erupted in arguments. Some species called for war. Others called for negotiation. Still others began questioning whether the council had made a terrible mistake 20 years ago, when they banished humanity. "We suppressed them," one ambassador said quietly. "We tried to keep them weak, and instead we drove them away where they became stronger without our rules limiting them." "This is our fault. Silence!" Zarthek the Elder commanded. "We will not debate the past. We must decide on action. A coalition war. All council species contributing ships and resources to contain the human threat once and for all." But the vote was not unanimous. 15 species refused to support the war. Some because they feared losing, others because they had secret sympathies with the Dominion, and a few because they had begun receiving messages from their own citizens, asking why the council was so afraid of a species that had done nothing to threaten them. The council was fracturing, and everyone could see it. In her office on New Terra, Director Sarah Okonkwo smiled as she read the intelligence reports. Her spy networks had been working for 20 years, building contacts, gathering information, and now was the time to use it. "Send the data to every major news network in council space," she told her staff. "Everything we've found about council corruption. Make sure every species sees it." The information bomb she released was devastating. Evidence that the council had been suppressing technological development for millennia, not for safety, but to maintain their own power. Records showing how the council had destroyed emerging species that might challenge their authority. Financial data proving that the elder species received better trade terms while younger species were systematically kept poor. Across the galaxy, people watched in horror as their government's crimes were exposed. Protests began on dozens of council worlds. Several species populations demanded their leaders explain themselves. The Tavara tried to use their telepathic abilities to calm the unrest, but it only made things worse. People accused them of mind control, of manipulation. The trust that had held the council together for thousands of years began to crack. President Marcus Chen called an emergency cabinet meeting. Helena Vasquez, despite her age, had returned once more to advise him. "They're going to come for us," Marcus said. "A real war this time." "Maybe," Elena replied. "Or maybe they'll destroy themselves first. That information Sarah released is tearing them apart from the inside. We need to be ready for either possibility," said Admiral Okafor via video link. "I'm repositioning the fleet for defensive operations. If they come in force, we'll make them pay for every system they try to take." Marcus nodded, then looked at Sarah. "You've been preparing for this moment since Junction Station, since we lost your family. Are you satisfied?" Sarah was quiet for a long moment. "I wanted justice for my mother and brother. I wanted the council to hurt the way they hurt us. But now I realize this isn't about revenge anymore. It's about showing the galaxy that there's a better way. The council rules through fear and control. We offer freedom and partnership. That's why species are flocking to join us. That's why they're falling apart." "The council is requesting negotiations," the communications officer reported. "They want to meet at a neutral location to discuss a new treaty." Everyone in the room looked at each other. This was the moment they had been working toward, hoping for, and dreading. "Do we trust them?" Marcus asked. "No," Sarah said immediately. "But we don't need to trust them. We just need to be smarter than them." Elena leaned forward. 20 years ago, I stood before the council and begged them to accept us. They refused. Now they're coming to us, asking for negotiations. Marcus, humanity holds all the advantages now. Military strength, technological innovation, and moral authority. The question isn't whether we should negotiate. It's what terms we demand. Marcus thought about the 40 million refugees who had left council space with nothing but hope. He thought about the 3,000 dead at Junction Station. He thought about 20 years of isolation, struggle, and growth. "We'll negotiate," he said finally, "but not as supplicants, not as a junior species asking for permission to exist. We negotiate as equals, and if they can't accept that, then we'll show them exactly what humanity has become." Admiral Zarthek the Younger, still recovering from his defeat, received a message from the Dominion. It was from Admiral Okafor, the woman who had defeated him. "Your father banished us because he feared what we might become. You attacked us to prove you were stronger. Both of you were wrong. Humanity doesn't want to conquer the galaxy. We want to build something better than what exists. If your people are willing to listen, to really listen, we can show you. But if you come in force again, we will defend ourselves, and next time we won't be as merciful." Zarthek stared at the message for a long time. Then, for the first time in his life, he began to question everything his father had taught him about humanity. The station called Horizon floated in neutral space, exactly halfway between Council territory and the Dominion. It had been built specifically for these negotiations, a neutral ground where old enemies could meet and try to forge something new. President Marcus Chen arrived with a small delegation. Elena Vasquez, now 85 and moving with the help of a cane, insisted on coming. Sarah Okonkwo was there as well, her sharp eyes watching everything. Admiral Okafor remained with the fleet, ready to respond if this turned out to be a trap. The council sent 47 representatives, one from each member species. But Marcus noted that several looked uncomfortable, and the usual unity of the council seemed fractured. Speaker Zarthek the Elder opened the meeting. He was ancient now, his insectoid body moving slower than Marcus remembered from 20 years ago. "President Chen, we meet under difficult circumstances." "We meet because you made them difficult," Marcus replied calmly. 20 years ago, we asked to join you as friends. You responded with banishment. When we built a new home, you attacked our refugees and killed 3,000 innocents. When we defended ourselves, you sent a military fleet into our space. And now you want to negotiate. Forgive me if I'm skeptical about your intentions. Several council members shifted uncomfortably. The Vorn representative spoke up. "Not all of us supported those actions. Many of us have regretted the banishment since it happened." "Then why didn't you stop it?" Elena asked, her old voice still carrying steel. "Why didn't you stand up for what was right instead of what was safe?" Silence filled the chamber. Finally, Shinal the Tavara spoke, their voice softer than usual. "Because we were afraid. The elder species have ruled for so long that we forgot how to share power. We saw humanity's potential and panicked. We were wrong." It was the first time Marcus had ever heard a council member admit error. He glanced at Sarah, who gave him a small nod. This might actually be genuine. "Words are easy," Marcus said. "What matters now is action. Why should humanity trust anything the council says?" "Because we're not asking for trust," said a new voice. Admiral Zarthek the Younger had entered the chamber, against protocol. His father looked at him in shock, but the younger Krell continued. "You defeated my fleet. You could have destroyed us completely, but you showed mercy. That taught me more about humanity than 20 years of my father's warnings." The young admiral turned to address the full council. "I was raised to believe humans were dangerous barbarians. But barbarians don't show mercy. Barbarians don't build alliances with species the council rejected. Barbarians don't create a society based on freedom and cooperation. Everything I was taught about humanity was wrong." Zarthek the Elder rose from his seat. "You speak out of turn and out of ignorance. This council has maintained galactic peace for millennia." "Yes, I know," his son interrupted. "But at what cost? Director Okonkwo's intelligence release showed us the truth. We've been suppressing other species to maintain our own power. We're not peacekeepers. We're tyrants." The chamber erupted in arguments. Some species defended the council. Others agreed with the younger Zarthek. Marcus watched it all with interest. The council was tearing itself apart, and he hadn't even presented his terms yet. Elena leaned close to Marcus. This is our chance, not to destroy them, but to transform them. Marcus stood, and somehow his presence commanded enough attention that the arguing slowly stopped. The council as it exists is broken. Everyone in this room knows it. The question is what comes next. You can cling to the old ways and watch your alliance crumble, or you can join us in building something better. Join you? Zarthek the Elder said with contempt. You would have us submit to human authority? No, Marcus said firmly. I would have you join an alliance where no single species holds permanent authority, where technology is shared, not hoarded, where emerging species are welcomed, not feared, where decisions are made democratically based on population, not on how old your civilization is. Sarah stepped forward with a data tablet. We call it the Galactic Commonwealth. Here are the proposed principles. As she displayed the information, council members leaned forward to read. The principles were revolutionary. No species would have permanent leadership positions. Leadership would rotate every 5 years. Technology sharing. Agreements would be mandatory for all members. Military forces would be unified for mutual defense but could not be used for aggressive expansion. Cultural. Autonomy would be guaranteed. No species would be forced to adopt another's. Customs. Democratic representation based on population, with protections for smaller species. Any species could join by meeting basic criteria: respect for individual rights, commitment to peaceful coexistence, and contribution to the common defense. This is madness, Zarthek the Elder said. You would give power to every young species in the galaxy? We would give power to everyone, Marcus corrected, including the council species who join us. The elder races would still have influence, but you'd have to earn it through wisdom and leadership, not simply because you're old. The debates lasted for 3 days. Some council species immediately declared they would join the Commonwealth. The Vorn were first, having never truly supported humanity's banishment. The Shan followed, along with 15 other species who had grown tired of the council's rigid hierarchy. But the Krell and Tavara refused. Zarthek the Elder walked out of the negotiations, and 20 other species followed him. They formed what they called the Traditional Coalition, dedicated to preserving the old ways. Marcus wasn't surprised. Change was hard, especially for species who had ruled for millennia. But he was satisfied with the 32 species who chose to join the Commonwealth. The signing ceremony was simple but powerful. 32 species, including humanity's Free People's Alliance, signed the Commonwealth Charter. The new organization would be headquartered on a neutral world, with rotating leadership and equal representation. Elena Vasquez, too frail to stand for long, was given the honor of the closing address. She looked out at the assembled species with tears in her eyes. 20 years ago, I stood before the council and asked for acceptance. They gave us rejection and exile. I was devastated. I thought humanity's dreams of joining the galactic community were over. She paused, gathering strength. But I was wrong. We didn't need to join their community. We needed to build our own, a better one. One that welcomed difference instead of fearing it. One that shared power instead of hoarding it. You banished us, expecting us to wither in the darkness. Instead, we grew. We thrived. And now we offer you the chance to grow with us. She sat down to thunderous applause from species who had once voted against her. President Chen was offered the position of first Commonwealth Chancellor, but he declined. This can't be humanity's organization. It has to belong to everyone. Instead, a Vorn diplomat named Karesh was chosen as the first chancellor, with a human, Sarah Okonkwo, as the first security director. Marcus returned to New Terra satisfied but exhausted. He had served as president for 8 years, and it was time for someone younger to lead. He announced he would not seek re-election. On the day of his retirement speech, Marcus stood before the citizens of the Dominion and reflected on their journey. We were banished by those who feared us. We could have become bitter, vengeful, and exactly what they expected. Instead, we became better. We proved that humanity's strength isn't in our weapons or our ships. It's in our ability to build, to adapt, and to include others in our vision of the future. That's what makes us special. That's what makes us human. In the years that followed, the Galactic Commonwealth flourished. Within 5 years, 67 species had joined. Technology advanced at unprecedented rates as species shared knowledge freely. Cultural exchange programs created understanding and friendship. The Commonwealth military, with its mix of tactics and technologies from dozens of species, became the most effective defense force the galaxy had ever seen. The traditional coalition, meanwhile, stagnated. Without the innovation and energy of younger species, the Krell and Tavara found themselves falling behind technologically and economically. Their young people, seeing the prosperity and freedom of the Commonwealth, began emigrating. 10 years after the founding of the Commonwealth, Director Sarah Okonkwo received a secret message. It was from Admiral Zarthek the Younger. His father had died, and the new Krell leadership wanted to discuss joining the Commonwealth. "Some of my people still fear this change," Zarthek wrote. "But they fear being left behind more. Would you be willing to meet with me? To help us find a path forward?" Sarah sat in her office looking at the message. She thought about her mother and brother, killed at Junction Station by Krell peacekeepers. She thought about 20 years of anger, of working to punish those who had hurt humanity. Then she thought about what Elena had said. "We became better." Sarah began typing her response. "Yes, let's talk about the future, not the past." 15 years after humanity's banishment, Sarah stood on the observation deck of a Commonwealth station and watched ships from 73 different species arriving for the annual summit. Human ships, Krell ships, Tavara ships. Even the proud Tavara had finally joined, unable to remain isolated while the galaxy moved forward without them. Beside her stood an old friend, Captain Lyra Vorn, now ambassador.